obviously the football season has not gone to plan, and I'm curious to get your takes. I've read some of your articles. I thought you wrote a great article about kind of the totality of what would happen if you were to replace Jonathan Smith, and that there's more to it than kind of meets the eye, the fans saying, oh, well, this isn't good enough, get rid of him. Because one of the things that I have thought of with this, because I'm an Indiana guy, we're having an incredible year that I still can't understand.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. And I can't, I still don't understand. It doesn't compute in my head that the team in the crimson and cream is running around and has higher scores. It just doesn't work for me because I'm too used to other Indiana traditions. But with Michigan State, I think of them as kind of positioned ahead of Indiana most of the time, not these last couple years, but they have a good tradition. But I think you did a good job of highlighting the fact that Smith isn't that far off the pace of what they've been doing. I think they kind of struggle, like a lot of teams do, with legacy and what their team should actually be able to get as far as a coach, what they're in the market for. Indiana basketball is guilty of this all the time. They always think they're going to hire the top. Okay, we have a coaching vacancy. Let's go hire Brad Stevens when he was already coaching the Celtics. No, he's not going to go to the Hoosiers and take that job. And so the fan base can be unreasonable about these things, but I don't really know where to put Michigan State. So I thought you did a good job of that because they've had good seasons. They had obviously the Saban run earlier. They had the D'Antonio run where there were some good seasons in there. You talked about the Kenneth Walker season, but I'm curious kind of how you go about that and where you stand on the season so far, because I think Smith is a good coach and can be a good coach, but there's obviously some things that aren't clicking right now this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even with D'Antonio, the final few years of D'Antonio were basically 500 football. And quite honestly, the last few years, even after he made the playoffs, where he had the 3-9 year with the 1 year that he didn't make a bowl game, and then he had a nice bounce back year, but then they were 500 the rest of the final 2 years in 18 and 19. And, there are 57 and 59 since making the college football playoff in 2015, and 34 and 51 in the Big Ten. And that's with 2 years and 17 and then 21 again, where they were competing for a division title to go and play in Indianapolis and didn't make it. So they had a couple blips in there. And, I think what it does, first of all, it shows the incredible job that Mark D'Antonio did from about 2000, well, actually really when he took over in 2007 all the way through that 2015 season and even the 17 season. He made Michigan State, much like Tom Izzo did in basketball, a consistent winner. It was something that really few thought would be possible post Duffy Daugherty. I mean, it has not happened. When Daugherty, even the end of Daugherty's tenure, I wrote about this towards the end of D'Antonio's tenure, he began to slip. He began to slip quite a bit after that 66 national title run. And, 67 was rough, all the way up till he retired in 72, I believe. And Denny Stoles came in, they hit with probation. Darryl Rogers came in and kind of took it over and righted it for a little bit and then left for Arizona State, which, again, people outside of the Michigan State sphere sometimes find the Michigan State sphere a little bit, I don't want to say cumbersome, but it's a difficult sphere to navigate. Politically and internally, it's a different ecosystem than a lot of people from outside of it are used to. I think that's why you see many of the hires, whether it be athletic directors, whether it be football coaches, have had some sort of experience within the ecosystem. And then Muddy Waters struggled. George Perlis came in, righted the ship, and he got, eventually that fell apart. And Nick Saban, remember, Nick Saban wasn't Nick Saban, right? He had been here as a defensive coordinator under Perlis, and when he came back, he had 500 seasons. He had some struggles up until that 99 season when they went 11-2, and then he left for LSU. But even the year before that, he had probably about as much talent the previous year, and they were about a 500 team. The team that beat Ohio State on the road in Columbus when it was number one. It was probably John Cooper's best team. So it's if you take it, you have to take a big picture look at who exactly you are if you're Michigan State, and I think that's the first step to deciding. Okay, can Jonathan Smith get us beyond where we have normally been, or do we really need to go out and make a different hire? I mean, it's going to be a fascinating thing for a new AD who does not have that experience, a new president who does not have that internal experience, and navigating a donor base that, quite frankly, set Jonathan Smith up to fail from the beginning.
Those are all interesting points because I was thinking of some of those, especially the donor base piece. I know they lost one of the bigger donors here in the last year or two, and I'm sure there's other people contributing, but I know that was one of the things that one of the selling points on BAT coming in and being able to mobilize that, work the NIL side of things, and that's ever changing. But that's kind of the math that I have a hard time computing nowadays too, because I was always under the impression and under the mindset that if you hired a coach, especially in college football, that you had to at least give them through a full cycle of recruiting to see what they were made of. You've got to hire them, and then they've got to bring in that freshman class, and then that freshman class has to become seniors, and you've got to have all of their recruits in there. And obviously recruiting starts way before, as you know better than I do, way before that junior year time frame now, but at least have their guys where they're working the system, and it's based within their offense, defense, their schemes, what have you. But now NIL and the transfer portal have kind of made a lot of things a bit muddy, but it makes that muddy too because a guy like Curt Cignetti, to go back to Indiana, can come in and pull all his guys from James Madison of all places and then turn a program that's never historically been very good into a college football playoff team, and now into an undefeated team, and get better guys through the transfer portal the next year. And so I don't even know how to compute that, because the guys still need time to put all of this stuff in place and get their schemes and get the right players for their schemes. But with the ways to acquire them from season to season and get veterans, quote unquote, in the college football scene, I don't even know how much time we're supposed to give somebody.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the better question is, how much money are these donors needing to give the coaches? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, this last cycle, I believe, was the last real, and by real, I mean it was a real short window for what this extravagant NIL and NIL collectives had done. And you saw it at Michigan with Bryce Underwood, the money that they gave him before it all got contracted and constricted now with the new rules and the College Sports Commission, and basically schools being told to go away from the collectives and all of that. I mean, that's, you're seeing Michigan State try and create something different to bring in the donors internally and then distribute the money that way. I mean, it's really the Wild West. I mean, nobody knows. And I mean, I think athletic directors are also trying to navigate that whole idea. Do you want to be a school that continues to hire and fire people? Do you want to be a school that is just a stop off on the way of free agency in college sports? Because that's not a healthy thing and a healthy system for anybody, whether it be the athletes and the students, whether it be for the coaches, and really, quite honestly, for the fans and the program itself. I mean, if you have constant movement like this, whether it be coaches, whether it be players, I mean, you don't want to be a stopgap. You want to be a destination. And so how do you do that? I think that's the question that Jay Batt and really Kevin Guskowitz, the university president, have to answer when they're trying to shape what Michigan State's identity and role is as a football program. I think Tom Izzo's program is pretty well established after 31 years, right? And it kind of sets a benchmark. And I think when Alan Haller hired Jonathan Smith, he was looking at that as someone who was a program builder who could take a long-term view and approach to bring Michigan State back to where Mark D'Antonio had it. But the game has changed. I mean, the game has changed because of all the money that's being thrown around by donors. And, that's where I have another big question, I think, in all of this. Who's running the ship? Is it the donors? Is it the athletic department? Is it the athletic director? Is it the board of trustees or regents? I mean, nobody really knows at this point. But I do think that a solid leadership within the university structure has to kind of navigate that and, be able to play the sides, but also be firm that this is a university decision. This is not a donor decision.
Well, appropriately for Michigan State, it's very muddy waters in the modern day of college football and NIL and everything. And you hit on kind of what my next question was going to be and basically answered it, which was about kind of the math of it and talking about the donors and the idea that if you do fire Jonathan Smith, then you've got to worry about the buyout piece, and you cover that in your great piece recently. And so, yeah, there's so many things that it's hard to pull a string and kind of not end up with a knot in all of this. But
well, and the other component too is which direction. Let's say they were to get rid of him, and you would have to pay him, you would have to pay his staff their walkaway money, and then you would have to, depending on which way you went, the coach, would you go after a coach that's already seated and established somewhere else, because then you have to pay buyout money for them and their staff, or do you go after someone like a James Franklin or a Pat Fitzgerald or somebody that's outside of the profession right now, either through termination or by decision? Nudge Urban Meyer, if you want to throw that name again against the wall like some did. But the reality, I mean, then you wouldn't have to pay a buyout for them, but you still, if they're going to have coaches that they want to get, that you're going to have to go pay buyout numbers for. So it's, there's a lot of money. And I think the quiet part that nobody wants to really address here, that as a fiscal leader, J-Bat has to understand that until something is adjudicated with Mel Tucker, you're still, until it is said and done, you still have that there of $80+ million that you might owe. And, whether they negotiate a buyout or not a buyout, but basically if they negotiate walkaway terms to end the lawsuit, to mitigate damage and make this whole continuing saga go away, that's one thing. So there's more money involved there. Or do they fight it out the whole way and continue to have attention, continue to get dragged through in discovery and everything else? I don't think they want to do that either. So there's a lot of components that, even to Jonathan Smith, have nothing to do with him, but everything to do with his job security.
It would be wild, in your words, to your point, to be paying walkaway money to two coaches at the same time. The last two coaches, like you said, with the Tucker situation, and then pay Smith if you do get rid of him. So it is,
and then three if you bring in a new coach who's already sitting. And quite honestly, right when Mark D'Antonio left, he took a one-time payment too. So, that's essentially, in 5 years, you're paying four coaches a lot of money.
And obviously the lack of continuity has not helped them from that side. Obviously couldn't control the Tucker situation so much, but the Smith situation is more under their control. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And that's great stuff as usual on that discussion. So you always make too many interesting points and extend the conversation, which is great. But I want to talk a little basketball too, because we tipped off with that recently, and I want to see what you think of the team and the recent win over Arkansas. So we'll come back with Chris Solari after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Chris Solari, the Detroit Free Press, talking some Michigan State sports here. Wanted to get in at least a little basketball in our short segment here, Chris, because I like this team this year. I watched the last game. It was a good game against a tough team. They played well. The freshmen, as you highlighted in your recent article, got a lot of minutes, and that seemed to impact things. But this seems like kind of a classic Tom Izzo team to me. But I'm curious what you've seen from following them here, even though you're doing double duty here at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very blue-collar team, and I think, anytime you have a team that starts from the inside out, I think that's partly kind of going to be the ethos. I mean, I think Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper provide maybe one of the best 1-2 big man tandems that Izzo's had in recent years. And then you add in Cohen Carr to that as well, coming from the wing and being able to drop down to the 4. But I do think that Cam Ward, the job he did against Arkansas, really shows that he's a ready-made college player. That was a second college game. He ends up with 18-10, and really at times was just dominating in that game, and backing guys down and scoring off second chance, and catching passes in the paint. Cohen Carr, I thought, had a tremendous game of using his passing ability, which is something we haven't really seen a lot of. And Jordan Scott, I think, defensively really gave them some options at the 2 guard, and he was a dog on the rebounds too. I mean, they crushed Arkansas both on the glass in second chance points and in paint scoring. So those were, I think, some big time things. They've got a lot of questions though at the 2 guard, and they've got a lot of problems again shooting from the arc. I think that Trey Fort and Kurt Tang both have had their struggles one way or another, both defensively and offensively. I think Jordan Scott is, he's ideally probably more of a 3, but he's got the ability and defensive ability and length to be an impact guy at the 2, and he does have a shot, but it's a lot to put on a freshman to check at that high level. We saw that with Max Christie. Max Christie, when Izzo had him, was brought in as a very good 3-point shooter, and he turned into a defensive dynamo and a guy who was able to create some things, but his 3-point shot struggled. And he got it back when he got to the NBA. But those are some things that I think are going to be an issue. And I think Jeremy Fears has been a tremendous leader, and I think you see his court vision with this team and his leadership and his ability on the defensive end to get into guys and get into guys' heads on the other team. They do need some offense out of him. He can't go 0 for 7. He's got to be able to hit inside. He's got to be able to hit some of those floaters, hit a couple elbow jumpers, not necessarily extending it to the 3, but he's got to be able to show he can shoot from outside. Otherwise, teams are going to sag off him, and the same with Cohen Carr. So, but I do like this team, and I think it's going to be a fascinating watch this year to see how it develops and evolves.
That's the key word for me, because Izzo, as you mentioned, with Christie and numerous other players, he's a good developmental coach. He's good at getting the best out of his players, especially if they're the right fit for him and his system and his coaching style. And this team seems like, we were talking a little bit about this in the first segment, how we tend to make people one thing. And this team seems like a bunch of guys that if we made them one thing in previous years, or seeing them initially, like Cohen Carr's a high flyer, Kohler's an energy big man. But then last year we realized, oh, wait a minute, Kohler and Cooper are getting outside and shooting from the outside. Oh, Carr, like you said, has some court vision, has some feel for his game, and then hopefully that can expand to Fears, and that he can show that offensive side to go with his leadership and passing. But I think this is a good starting point for the team, and if they can make that jump, which it's a classic Izzo team with a classic Izzo schedule, that there's a murderer's row here of teams in the early going, because he always schedules tough, which affects the regular season record but often gets them tournament ready. It'll be interesting to see how they do during this upcoming non-conference schedule, because they started it out well against Arkansas, but they've got Duke and a whole host of other teams coming up here.
Yeah, and in between the Arkansas and Duke game, you have next Tuesday, you've got Kentucky at Madison Square Garden in the Champions Classic, and then you've got in Fort Myers, Florida, Thanksgiving Day, North Carolina. So this is a gauntlet schedule, and there are some, they got, I think Thursday they've got San Jose State coming in, so that's a little bit of drop in competition. So I think it's a nice wave for Izzo to kind of see things and kind of push and prod and test these kids against high-end competition, and then rein it back and try and work on some things and get some things accomplished for the next big test, which will be the Kentucky game. And then you come back and you got a couple other games, and then you got to go play North Carolina in that tournament. And next thing you know, it's going to be early December. You got Duke coming in, and then you start into Big Ten play. So it is more than just a murderer's row. But I do think that it's scheduled in such a wave fashion that it allows Izzo and his staff to really get a better gauge of the developmental needs for this team before the Big Ten play starts.
Which I think is going to be strong this year. Obviously, in-state rival Michigan is looking good so far. They've reloaded that roster and they look good. I think there's going to be a lot of strong teams this year. So it's going to be they're going to be tested again, just like last year. I was at the Big Ten tournament and it was a tough one, and they sent everybody through the paces, but that's the Big Ten now, especially with the expanded format. So hopefully Izzo's scheduling will get them ready for Big Ten play, and then hopefully tournament play, both the Big Ten tournament and then NCAA tournament eventually.
Yeah, that's his usual MO.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a long time, and it clearly works. And his players get battle tested, and there's something to that you've been in those key games, and then down the stretch you can get a guy like Jace Richardson developing last year. So hopefully that something like that can happen this year. But we appreciate you joining the show. I know we got to get you out of here, but we're glad you could join us and chat some football and basketball, and hopefully we'll have you back on here as both seasons progress and get your takes on everything developing here.
Sounds great, Ryan. Let's do this again soon. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Be well.
Talk to you soon.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.